Thank you so much for joining me today. I am so excited to have you here to share with me and to allow me to talk to you about a topic that's near and dear to my heart. You see, I want to talk to you today about people pleasing. You see, I am a recovering people pleaser. I say recovering because I every day struggle with putting my needs aside, trying to please everybody else to the extent of my own needs, my own health, and my own well-being. You see, no is a seemingly simple word. And as young children, it was a word we frequently used. Toddlers defiantly say no to their parents. I have 2 children, and I understand those terrible twos was full of the word no. But you know what? As children, we quickly discover that the word no is inappropriate. And many times when we get older, we seem to carry that toddler interaction into our adult belief system. We believe that saying no is inappropriate and impolite. This internalizing belief, I think, is why so many people, including myself, struggle with saying no and setting proper boundaries. You see, Dr. Henry Cloud is an expert on boundaries, and many years ago when I met him and spoke with him, he brought into reality a way of looking at boundaries to me that just comes to life. And that is thinking of boundaries as our yard. You see, when I grew up, my father was meticulous at keeping our yard. He would go outside, he would walk the ground, he would look for little pebbles. And in those days, he'd look for little pebbles and he would pick them up and he would gather them and he would properly put them in a place where they couldn't be picked up by the mower for 2 reasons. You see, the first reason was they didn't have the bags on the mowers back then, and a rock could shoot out and it could hurt somebody. So it could hurt somebody, it could put out a window. Those rocks were something in our yard that for 2 reasons need to be picked up. One, they could hurt him, they could hurt the mower, and they could hurt our property. So he would meticulously walk around and make sure his yard was kept. He would weed whack. He took great pride in his yard. But there's one thing I never saw my father do. He never took the same type of care over our neighbor's yard. You see, my father and our family knew exactly where our property line started and where our neighbors began. We mowed and we trimmed right up to that property line, and our neighbors did exactly the same right to their property line. You see, somebody walking down the street that would look, they wouldn't know where our property line started and another our neighbor's property line began, because it looked great. It was cared to. But we knew where we needed to say no. And that's what I'm talking about when I talk about boundaries. Many people, and myself included, we struggle with saying no to things that we should say no to, taking on other people's responsibilities. We don't know where our responsibility stops and other people's begin because we've blurred it. And because we've blurred it, other people don't understand it either. And they are constantly actually pushing through our boundaries. You see, I was often overlooked for my value and expertise. And I took the easy way out. I decided to please people, to deal with the pain of being overlooked, only to suffer in the long run. You see, people pleasing by default, it hands control of our value and our worth and our personal power over to other people. We will never succeed in life when we try to be all things to all people. Ultimately, we will end up failing everyone, including ourselves. You see, people pleasers, whether chronic or occasional, they fear and avoid conflict. That's what I did in my life. This conflict avoidance resulted in an internal struggle for me to stand up for myself and what I believed in. You see, people pleasers, we pretend to agree with everyone, and we also take on everybody's responsibilities. We take on the feelings of others. We morph into who they want us to be to make them feel comfortable at our own expense and our own emotional well-being and health. So I want to encourage you today to think about boundaries. You see, boundaries are simply limits that we set around our time and our energy and our money. Once we identify where we stop and other people begin, it becomes much easier to hold true to our boundaries. But when we have a lack of proper boundaries and we tend to people please, it leads to physical, emotional, and sometimes even mental health issues. You see, when we understand how to set limits around our time and our energy and our money, we actually then allow ourselves to be free, to be the absolute best version of who we were created to be. Thank you so much for joining me today about learning a little bit about boundaries and people pleasing. And join me because I am a recovering people pleaser. And I hope that if you struggle in this area too, that you will reach out. Click that button below. Join our Facebook group. Join our community. Learn more about how we can help grow to become the best version of who we are. Thank you, and may you